Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is verify. Let's take a look at some of the definitions for this verb. The first way you might hear the verb verify used is to prove the truth, accuracy, or reality of something. I chose this verb today because I've heard this verb quite a lot in the last few days as the United States is in the process of counting votes, counting ballots. And many people have mentioned the possibility that there could be fraud. And we'll talk about that a little later as we look at some example sentences. But part of the mail-in voting process is about proving the person who is submitting it is the true registered person who is able to vote. So proving the truth of that or the reality of that would connect to this definition. A similar way to use the word verify is to mean to find the truth or correctness of something. And you're doing that by examination, research, or comparison. You'll see some examples of this usage a little later in our example sentences. A third way you might hear the verb verify used is to confirm in law by oath. So this usage probably isn't as common to hear every day, but if you are involved in the legal system at all, then you just might encounter this particular usage. I would say all three of these meanings are interconnected, right? So it's about truth, honesty, and making sure something that is said to be true is true. Verify is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form verified. To make the past tense and participle forms of this verb, I'm going to change the y to an I and then add ed to form verified. And you might notice by me pronouncing that, I'm making a D sound. And the reason I'm making a D sound is that the verb ends with a vowel sound. Vowel sounds are always voiced. So because this base verb ends in a voiced sound, the ed is making just a D sound. I'll say it once again. Verified. Verified. You might be relieved to know that I don't have any additional meanings for the verb verify as we combine it with prepositions to form phrasal verbs. So we'll move straight into doing some verb tense practice with our verb of the day. Today, we'll look at making sentences in the simple past, the past perfect, and the simple present. Let's start with the simple past tense. We're using this verb tense to talk about an action that was completed at a definite time in the past. And so sometimes you'll see words like yesterday, last week, last month, and that indicates that it's a definite time. But you're not always going to see those time signals. There might be other indications in the paragraph or in the conversation you're having with others that indicate we're talking about a known point in the past. So the thing you should know about making a sentence in the affirmative is that we're going to use this ed form of the verb. This is true no matter what our subject is. Okay? So let's look at an example sentence, just one. County officials verified ballot signatures as the ballots arrived. So again, I mentioned I've been hearing this word quite a lot as I follow the news and wait to hear who the next president of the United States will be. And again, we had different state and local officials looking at people's signatures, comparing it to the signatures on file to ensure that these votes are being cast by eligible people and they aren't fraudulent. If I want to make a negative sentence with in the simple past tense, what I'm going to use is did not and the base verb. And again, this is true no matter what my subject is. You might hear native speakers use didn't and then the base verb. Here's an example. The employer didn't verify employees' legal work status. So again, we don't have an exact mention or a time signal in this sentence, but perhaps it's, again, part of a conversation or a longer story, and we know the time period that's being referenced. What's meant by this sentence is that an employer probably did not have employees fill out the Form I-9, which is required here in the United States to establish that someone can legally work in the United States. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, we're going to start with did, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example. Did they verify the accuracy of the new COVID-19 tests? Okay, so here, verify, they are checking the accuracy, the reality, to make sure it's doing what it says it's going to do. Now let's take a look at the past perfect. We use this verb tense to note that something was completed in the past tense before another activity. So sometimes with the past perfect, you will see one verb that's in the past perfect. That's what happened first. And then you'll see another verb in simple past tense that's noting the second action. Okay? To make the past perfect, we need two parts. We're going to use had and then the participle form of our verb. Let's look at an example sentence. The newspaper had verified the story before it published it online. Okay? So we have had verified in past perfect, and you'll see the verb publish is in simple past tense, just like we talked about. If I want to make a negative past perfect sentence, I'm going to insert not after had. And then again, use the participle form of the verb. You might hear native speakers use the contraction form hadn't and then the participle form. Here's an example sentence. They hadn't verified the claim before the interview. So again, we're going back to this meaning of checking the accuracy, checking the truth of a statement. And we're using the noun form, claim, that we discussed earlier this week. If I want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, I'm going to start with had, then I'll have my subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Had officials verified that there was an outbreak at the nursing home? Okay. We're asking if this had occurred before something else. Now let's take a look at the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. We also use it to discuss facts. Okay. In the simple present affirmative, we're going to use the base verb, just as it is spelled, if our subject is I, you, we, or they. If our subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to change the Y to an I and then add ES. Okay. So let's look at an affirmative example. States verify the authenticity of mail ballots to prevent fraud. Another way to think of this, to prevent someone from cheating. Okay. You'll notice here I'm talking about more than one state, so I'm using just the base verb. This is like having the subject of they. If I had just been talking about a single state, I would have said perhaps the name of the state, verifies, again, verifies, and then the rest of the sentence. Now let's look at making a negative sentence in the simple present. To do this, we're going to use do not in the base verb, or don't in the base verb, or does not or doesn't and the base verb. Again, that'll depend on our subject. Here is another example sentence. Some cigarette sellers don't verify buyers' ages. Okay? So there's a law here in the state I live in that someone needs to be at least 18 years old in order to buy tobacco products like a cigarette. Okay? So if someone appears to be rather young, the person selling it is supposed to ask for identification to make sure or to check the accuracy of someone's age in order to be able to make that purchase. Lastly, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, I'm going to start with do or does, then I'll have my subject, and then the base verb. Here's the last example sentence. Does the newspaper verify and review all letters to the editor? Okay, so again, checking accuracy, checking the truth. Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb verify. The first word we're going to look at is the noun verification. This means the process of establishing the truth, the accuracy, or the validity of something. Okay? So it connects very nicely with that first definition of the verb verify that we looked at earlier today. Here's an example of verification in a sentence. The state has launched a new ID verification program for unemployment applicants. Okay? So here in the United States, we know the pandemic has unfortunately caused so many people to lose their jobs, either temporarily or permanently. And many states have been overwhelmed with the number of applications for unemployment assistance. And I saw a reference to this in a news article where a state was talking about how to speed up the process. So they created a way to be able to establish the validity of a person's identity and their claim for unemployment. The next word we're going to look at is the adjective verifiable. So we can see the suffix able, able, and so this is probably not going to be a shock. Verifiable means able to be checked or able to be demonstrated to be true, accurate, or just justified. So a way you might hear this used is that a verifiable source. Okay? So we know a lot of information gets shared on various social media platforms, but sometimes that information isn't accurate. So as you hear different things, and perhaps if they sound really shocking, this is a good question to ask yourself. What's the source? Where's this information coming from? And can that person or organization demonstrate that the information is true and accurate? Okay. Now, our last word is going to be sort of the opposite adjective. Right? So here we'll see the prefix un, which we know means not, and we have the word unverifiable. And this means not able to be verified. So not able to be checked to see if it is true or accurate. Here is an example sentence. Claims of voter fraud are unverifiable. So unfortunately, there are things going around on social media right now talking about fraud in the U.S. election that was held this past week. But these claims, at this point in time, no one is able to demonstrate that they are true or accurate. So Keep that in mind as you read and follow the news. I hope you'll give a chance to using the verb verify as you speak or as you write this week. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great day.